It is time for Around the 412 with Smitty and Tyler.
Welcome back to another episode of Around the 412. I am Tyler. With me, as always, is my co-host, Smitty. Go follow us on all of our social medias at Around the 412. Also, go check us out on YouTube if you're not watching the show there already. Hit the notification bell so you never miss a video, and check out the description over on YouTube or on the listening platforms like Spotify and Apple Podcast. Check out all of our great sponsors. And, man, I feel like I got to be honest with everybody listening. This is a live show during a Penguins game on a Tuesday, which normally doesn't happen. It's actually happened one more time this season so far. But just because of recording scheduling conflicts, we were recording during a game. And the Penguins, as we know them, are back to what we thought they were, getting their teeth kicked in currently by the Tampa Bay Lightning. It is the second intermission, losing 6-0 to the Tampa Bay Lightning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they are who we thought they were. They had a nice little run that was cute, run like 4 games in a row or whatever. Really all came crashing down. I thought they were going to make it interesting. Really all came crashing down a week ago today against the Islanders, where they have a 2-0 lead going into the third period, and then just fall asleep at the wheel, end up losing that game 4-2 after an empty netter. Just a total collapse in the third period. Now they did beat the Blue Jackets after that. Game against the Panthers, again, had a lead, not great in the third period, just really having trouble closing out games. Where have you heard that before? Oh, that's right, the same podcast, going on 3 seasons in a row now. That has been an issue for them in the third period. And then, yeah, tonight's just absolutely getting their teeth kicked in, start to finish. They gave up 4 goals in a 3.5-minute stretch in the first period. I was looking at the notes of the game here. Yeah, not pretty. And to be honest with you, I'm so checked out in terms of the totality of the season. I was getting a little bit upset watching them go on a little bit of a run there for a while, where I was like, oh my God, they're going to end up winning just enough games where they miss by like 4 points in the playoffs and also end up not having that high of a draft pick. But they are who we thought they were in terms of what they are as a team. And now we're back to our regularly scheduled programming, where all we're watching for is Sidney Crosby points.
That's absolutely true, because if you want to be full disclosure, we just finished recording yesterday's Pirates podcast, and I went to look at the Penguins score, saw they were losing 6-0, and the only part of me that was disappointed is not seeing a goal for the Penguins, because that means there's no potential that Sidney Crosby could have had a point already. But before we talk about Sid, to talk about the Penguins and who we thought they were, they had a little bit of juice for like a couple weeks. I'm not gonna lie, like it came out of nowhere, had a little bit of a shot in the arm.
Was it just Jarry coming back up? Yeah, I was gonna say, was it just him coming back up?
Could have been. And you know what? He let up 4 goals in 3.5 minutes. So maybe Tristan Jarry is also who we thought he was. Again, we'll see. I mean, there will be another game that is happening today, actually. Whenever this podcast is coming out, they'll play the Buffalo Sabres. So we'll see how they fare in that one. But as of right now, not looking too good for the Penguins. They look like they did. And quite honestly, that goes back with status quo of what we were talking about, where this is one of the rare instances in the history of this show that we legitimately talk about them losing games and not being upset about it. We think that's probably for the betterment of the team. And you're not winning. You're not doing anything for like a winning culture at this point. Like, it is what it is. You just might as well just be as bad as possible from here on out and get Sidney Crosby at least 2 more points. But right now in the odds standings, honestly, not as bad as I thought it was going to be. Because they started off this, like, I guess, winning streak or hot streak, if you want to call it that, in the 6th position for the NHL draft lottery odds and everything. And they're only in the 7th position right now. So they've still got 9 games the rest of the season to move. Would that technically be up or down that board? It would be down, correct, to the lower number? But you're moving up to the better pick? I don't know. I guess it depends on how you're saying it. But they technically have 9 more games to figure themselves out and see where they're going to be going. They're currently behind San Jose, Chicago, Nashville, Buffalo, Philadelphia, and Seattle. In terms of the NHL draft lottery. Currently, the Penguins have a 44.4% chance of having the 7th overall pick if the draft were to happen today. Right now, they have a 6.5% chance at the first overall pick, 6.7 at the second overall pick, and a 0.2% chance at the third overall pick. That's always interesting to me. I don't really understand all of the statistics behind the percentages for the picks, but like, wouldn't you think that you'd have a higher odd the lower down you go for like the third overall pick than you would the first overall pick? It's just very interesting to me how that all works out. But the Penguins are still in a decent spot as far as like pick selection goes. Quite honestly, I don't really think that it should be like that big of a worry from where they were a couple weeks ago to where they are now in terms of the draft. Odds are, if you're not picking anywhere in the top like 1, 2, 3 spots, so like unless you do get one of those lottery picks, you're probably not drafting somebody that's going to be in effective 2026, most likely. So I feel like whether you're picking at like number 5 or you're picking at number 13, however this ends up going for the Penguins, I don't think that there's going to be a huge disparity between who you're picking. Now, if you get your better pick and you end up winning one of those lottery picks, then that changes the conversation. But I just don't think that there's going to be a huge disparity between like a couple different picks between like 5 to 10. And as far as like the player personnels go, you're more often than not, you're not picking somebody in those slots that are ready to just come contribute at the NHL level anyway.
Well, if you get one of the top 3 guys, that could be a real game changer. What's going on, everybody? Smitty from Around the 412, and I just want to take a quick second to give a shout out to our folks at Game Changers. Their logo on the screen right now, right above my microphone. Over 2,000 different designs in their catalog. Luxury heavyweight material. I am wearing one of their shirts right now. Best vintage t-shirts in the game. Head over to gamechanger.la or pick6.la to pick up some shirts. And guess what? Use code AT412. Save yourself $10 on your order every single time. Again, gamechanger.la or pick6.la. Best vintage t-shirts in the game. Check them out. The other thing that you said there that was kind of interesting to me, and like I've been thinking about quite a bit, just from like Sid's perspective, at 37 years old, leading the league in 5v5 in points, is kind of crazy to think about as well. And like, do you think that is, again, this is a different conversation. I know that like Sidney can't be the reason that you're like catering entire offseason and personnel and stuff too. I want to come back to the draft talk, but this kind of just popped in my head. We talked about Rickard Rakell, right? Like, are you worried about what Sid's game would drop to without Rickard Rakell on his line next season?
Potentially. I trying to think of who even would be a replacement for Rickard Rakell. You would
might not be on the roster right now.
You would assume Rust is probably still around, even though on July 1st his no movement clause gets taken off. So I would assume that Rust would still be around and he'd be one of Sid's wingers. But as of right now, no name is really sticking out as far as like who would be like a true replacement for Rakell. At least that's on the roster right now. So I'm sure it would take a hit based off of what they're doing. And I know I was very strongly for trading Rickard Rakell. But if the Penguins and Kyle Dubas seriously think that they can compete to get back into playoff contention in 2025, 26, then by all means keep him. Like, I know he's a good player. They like him. And with the cap going up, that contract suddenly gets a lot prettier to look at, specifically if you're getting a 30 goal scorer annually from that type of player, and it's somebody that Sidney Crosby likes to play with and plays well with. I don't mind that at all. It will be interesting for me to see how they handle this offseason, because I feel like that's going to be a big tell if they move on from Rickard Rakell, whether or not 2024 is just going to be a repeat in 2025. Because I think that if they keep Rickard Rakell, to me, that means that they think that they're closer than not to getting back to a competitive hockey team. Otherwise, they would have just moved on from him a couple weeks ago, probably. Yeah. At least that's how I would view it. And I think that Sidney Crosby's play probably would take a hit, mainly just because I don't think that you have a skilled enough winger to really move up there and be a contributor right away. I mean, quite honestly, like, name somebody that's currently on the roster that would move up to the top line with Rust and Sid without taking somebody off of Malkin's line. And you would say like you think that
well, I was just
it could work.
Get ready to learn Sidney Crosby, Phil Tomasino, but
that's the problem. You'd have to take away from Malkin to
Tommy Novak.
Tommy Novak, maybe.
Yeah.
I mean that could be a potential. But I just don't think there's anybody near, like, obviously not, but like there's nowhere near the caliber of player that you're going to get Raquel for him as a replacement.
Probably not on the roster right now. Yeah,
exactly.
If you trade Raquel, you're probably still bringing in somebody in free agency.
I mean, maybe one of the young guys that are down in the AHL right now, that has a good summer and a good training camp and starts out the year, like maybe one of those young players that you got in the Gensel trade, or maybe even, I mean, Rucker McGroarty's been on a tear in the AHL and he's not the same player that he was. If you want to go check out a good cut up of a tape for Rucker McGroarty, go check out Jesse Marshall's video that he just put out. Rucker McGroarty is a promising player, and definitely not the player that most Penguin fans would probably remember him in those couple games that he did play in Pittsburgh in October. I think that he's been greatly improved. So, I mean, there's options that are down in the AHL right now, but definitely at the NHL level, you're not going to get anything from him. But Sidney Crosby, I mean, you that's your season for the rest of the year. I mean, not even looking at 2025 anymore. That is quite literally your season, is trying to get Sid as many points as possible, but more importantly, just 2 more points, because then Sidney Crosby is going to break the Wayne Gretzky record that he's currently tied with for the most seasons at a point per game or better in their career. I mean, and to do that in a season where expectations were at an all-time low for the team, people, I feel like annually, and maybe they won't anymore because of the season Sid has had so far, but annually, everybody questions, when is Sid's play going to start to deteriorate? But not only that, you are first in the NHL, or tied for first in the NHL in 5v5 points among all skaters. Since the Four Nations face-off, you are first in the NHL in points total, and you are leading the NHL in the face-off dot at like 57, 58%. Like, I just think it just is insane, the level of play that you are still getting from Sidney Crosby. And that's why I don't think that like losing these games matter as much as far as like a culture thing goes. Like, I just think that that's out the window. Like, you don't need to build that winning culture right now. You need to better the organization. And I think it's clearly, you see from Sid, despite what the organization's motives are, what they're doing with their win total and what their projections are for this offseason, 2025 and beyond, Sid is still the competitor that he's always been. He's going to play at the highest level, even if the Penguins around him are not the same and not competitive enough. He is still playing at one of the highest levels of any skater in the NHL right now at 37, going to be 38 years old this summer. I mean, it's incredible to watch, and the fact that he's still doing it and after year 20 is just amazing to me.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, that's really the one thing that there is to watch. It's crazy. I don't want to turn this away from Sid, but I kind of just thought about this too. Like, even in the past 2 seasons where we haven't made the playoffs and we've had a pretty, like, we knew those teams weren't good pretty early on. They still were playing meaningful games though, up until like the very end. What was there, like 2 games left last year where they couldn't make the playoffs before they were eliminated? The season prior, it was like the last 2 games, 1 or 2. Like, they've played so few games in our hockey watching lifetimes where this team wasn't at least competing to make the playoffs down to the very end, but we're witnessing it right now where they're not. They're not technically eliminated yet, but they will be in short order. But yeah, so the buy-in from Sidney Crosby, I think, has to be commended too, just for that reason. Like, he's playing on a bad hockey team, but you never have to worry about his compete level and him showing up to the rink every single night. And that's why, to your point, that culture's already set. That culture's in place. We don't need to worry about winning games for young players in the organization, just to set that winning culture. Like, that's already established. So whoever's being brought in here, they're coming in knowing that that's the expectation and hope to get back to that sooner rather than later. They're just obviously not there yet. And you just hope that they're able to get back into that window with Sidney Crosby still on the roster and hopefully still playing at a high level. To the other thing that you said about like people just expecting his play to fall off or whatever, I don't think that that's going to change. I think people are still going to be predicting that to happen next year just because that's like because of his age, right? Like, so he's not getting any younger. Next year, people are going to think, okay, we know what he did last year. There's no way he's going to do it again, though. So I just think that when you get to that age, it's just every single season. And then when it eventually happens, those same people will act like, pat themselves on the back and act like it's like groundbreaking that they predicted for the 4th season in a row when it finally happened. So yeah, I don't put too much stock into that, but yeah, it's been awesome watching Sid every night. And out like, while he's obviously had better seasons, I think when you take into account the surrounding elements that he's dealing with this year and still about to do it yet again, be a point per game player, this has to be up there for his most impressive to me.
Yeah, I think when you look at the expectations surrounding the team, quite honestly, and then you look at what Sid's able to still do, and that's why I talked about like how competitive he still is, and you mentioned how that's your culture, like you don't need to breed into that. That is something that you can't teach, and that's something that Sid has always had, and it's just so impressive that even on a team that nobody had expectations for this season, including us, we knew that they were not going to be a good hockey team. We knew that they weren't going to make the postseason. Sid still goes out and is competitive enough to be one of the top forwards, one of the top centers in the NHL still. And I just think that everybody should always just relish when he's on the ice, because it's going to be amazing to me whenever he's gone. And we think about what we had in Pittsburgh, especially if you go out of a greater scope and you think about what you had between like Mario to Yager to Sid, like back to back to back captains. Well, there was like Mario, Yager, Mario, Sid, so a little mix up there. But the stretch that you've had for the past 40 plus years of leadership in hockey players on your team and the skill level that they possess and where they rank among all of the best players in the world, that's something that Penguins fans have had over so many franchises forever. I mean, quite literally lifetimes for a lot of these fan bases. The Penguins have had one of, if not the best player in the world. And whenever that ends, it's going to be a sad day. But whenever that ends, it's going to be a harsh reality. Potentially, I mean, maybe, who knows? Maybe some luck happens and we get Gavin McKenna next year. But you potentially have, for the first time in 4 decades, where you don't necessarily have that future on the team, and the Penguins might have to figure it out. But while it's here, it is just so impressive. And the more I think about Sidney Crosby, the more I think about Tom Brady, which I know a lot of people may seem is like a odd comparison, but when you just look at the longevity, the level of play that they have in their later years, still being able to keep up. I mean, think about how many times people said Tom Brady was going to be done, and he continued to prove people wrong. Won a few Super Bowls after everybody said his best days are behind him. I'm not saying that Sid's going to go out and win another couple more Stanley Cups, but just the fact that from an individual level standpoint, Sid is still playing at the highest he can. And I mean, obviously he's not younger Sid, and he's not putting up 120 points, but still potentially putting up 85 plus, maybe if he goes on a real tear over these last 9 games, 90 points again at year 37. I mean, not only would that break the record for point total as far as like point per game totals in your career for a year, but if he were to get like 90 points, I'm pretty sure he would break the record also for point totals as a 37-year-old's too. So, I mean, it's just so impressive what Sid's doing. I mean, and I could talk about him all day. My daughter, he is quite literally her namesake. So yeah, it's just like me gushing all the time about Sidney Crosby.
I've run out of words for Sidney Crosby, I think, and I've run out of words on this podcast to talk about the Penguins. So I don't have anything else to say. I at this point in the season, it really is just about Sidney Crosby for me. And I guess, to a little bit lesser extent, like I don't think he's going to score 8 goals in the remaining 10 games, but Rickard Rakell at 32 goals. We'll see how many he can rack up. Rack. Rust hit 25. Hopefully Gino's injury isn't too serious. And we'll see. It's going to be an interesting offseason, that's for sure. But yeah, if you got anything else, feel free.
Nothing. I mean, honestly, it's probably something that's going to make everybody mad more than anything. But I went back a few weeks ago and I looked into Sidney Crosby's like point per game average over some of those years where we had the concussion problems and the lockouts. And I tweeted it out and I said, friendly reminder that if it weren't for David Steckel and a lockout, Sidney Crosby would be about 100 points shy of 2,000 points based off of his points per game values over a full 82 game season from 2011 to 2013. If we did not have the prime of Sidney Crosby taken away by a half-year lockout and by David Steckel and the concussion problems, Sid would be closing in on 2,000 points already in his career. And it's just a shame that we never got to see that.
And we know who to blame.
Yeah, I'll call him out. I could literally call him out. David Steckel.
There it is.
If you ask anybody, or if anybody asks me, who is like a Mount Rushmore of most hated athletes all time, he's on there because of one particular reason, and that's it. He took away prime Sidney Crosby from us.
Where's he at now?
David Steckel?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Probably swallowing Tom Wilson's pee for all I care. I just do not like.
He has not been in the NHL since like 2013. Jeez.
His mission was accomplished.
Yeah. Unfortunate stuff. But anyways, we haven't played this. Well, you know what? This is a good transition. Guess David Steckel couldn't make the cut. Smitty from around the 412 here. And while I may not have much hair, the hair that I do have will not be cut by anybody besides Keek at Keek's Barbershop. My friend Christian Circle, been with us since day one. Keek's Barbershop, located 401 Burkitch Way, Suite 2 in Beaver, PA. Download the app, The Cut. Book an appointment with Christian today, or you can do walk-in with Tony or Ashley. But again, Keek's Barbershop, 401 Burkitch Way, Suite 2 in Beaver, PA. Go check them out. Old school vibe in there. Absolutely love it. Cannot recommend them enough. Wouldn't go anywhere else. Maybe I'll see you there. Yeah, sorry, Dave Steckel. Not really. But yeah, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell if you were here on YouTube. If you're listening somewhere else, go over to YouTube, do that same stuff, but also leave us a 5-star review and subscribe wherever you're listening, Apple, Spotify, wherever your podcast's from. Just search around the 412. You will find us there. And regardless of where you're watching or listening, check out the description of the show. Bunch of links in there. Game Changers, where we talked about them. Save yourself $10 when you use the code AT412. Just talked about Keeks. Above Tyler right now, Marcello Electric, our friend Brandon Marcello, a.k.a. Boots, his small business serving Beaver, Allegheny, Lawrence, and Butler County, commercial, residential, or service calls. To contact him, 724-614-0611. Again, 724-614-0611. Got his Facebook link down below, right to his Facebook page for the company. Bunch of pictures on there in terms of the work that he does. Gets in touch with him. Email and phone number both on the page as well, in case you didn't remember that phone number that I just threw your way. Everything Custom Designs, our friend Haley Wagner, small business. Our merch, your merch, whatever you want, she can do it. Long sleeve, t-shirts, hoodies, glass tumblers, bunch of different stuff. Again, our merch, or you can do something of your own. She can do either one for you. And speaking of our merch, our shorts from DC40 Customs down below as well. You can get them in black and gray and white. Spring just around the corner. Going to start warming up. Make sure you get yourself some shorts. Find us everywhere. All the social medias. Well, except for Blue Sky. People still go on that when Twitter isn't down. I don't know that that's really a thing. NFL free agency on Blue Sky was pretty fun for a bit there, but I don't know that a bunch of people are really on there anymore. But yeah, follow us on everything at Around the 412. And that'll do it. So for Tyler, for Smitty, this has been the Around the 412 Penguin Show. And we'll see. Go watch Pirate Show. It was like double time of this for some reason. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.